The ghost of the Lone Star State. Sarah had always been a curious girl, with a fascination for all things spooky and mysterious. When her family moved to a small town in Texas, she was excited to explore her new surroundings and learn about the local ghost stories. It didn't take long for Sarah to hear whispers of a haunting that had plagued the town for over a century. According to the legend, a young woman named Anna had been accused of witchcraft in the late 1800s and burned at the stake. Before she died, Anna cursed the town, vowing that her spirit would haunt it forever. Sarah was intrigued by the story and decided to investigate. She visited the town's library and pored over old newspaper clippings and historical records. But the more she learned about Anna's tragic fate, the more she started to feel like she was being watched. She heard footsteps in the hallway at night and felt a cold presence in her room. At first, Sarah tried to brush off the strange occurrences as her imagination. But soon, she couldn't ignore them any longer. One night, she woke up to find that her bed was shaking. She heard a voice whisper her name, and she saw a figure in white standing at the foot of her bed. She tried to scream, but her voice was caught in her throat. The figure disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. She decided to seek out the town's historian, Mr. Johnson, to see if he knew anything more about the ghostly haunting. Mr. Johnson was a friendly old man with a passion for local history. He listened patiently as Sarah recounted her experiences and then told her about Anna's tragic end. He showed her an old photograph of Anna, a beautiful young woman with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. Anna was a kind and gentle soul, Mr. Johnson said. She was falsely accused of witchcraft by jealous townspeople who were afraid of her powers. She was burned at the stake, but before she died, she vowed to haunt the town forever. Sarah was determined to help Anna find peace. She asked Mr. Johnson if he knew where Anna's grave was located, and he pointed her in the direction of the town's cemetery. The cemetery was overgrown and unkempt, with crumbling headstones and weeds growing between the graves. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she walked through the rows of graves, searching for Anna's resting place. Finally, she found it, a small, unmarked grave at the edge of the cemetery. Sarah knelt down and placed a hand on the rough stone. "Anna," she whispered. "I know you're here. Please, let me help you." Suddenly, Sarah felt a cold breeze blow through the cemetery. The trees rustled, and the grass swayed as though something were moving through it. Sarah closed her eyes and focused, trying to reach out to Anna's spirit. When she opened her eyes again, she saw a figure in white standing before her. It was Anna, her long hair blowing in the wind. Sarah could feel the sadness and pain emanating from her. "Anna, I want to help you," Sarah said. "Tell me what I can do." Anna's voice was soft and melancholy. "My bones," she said. "They were stolen from my grave. Until they are returned, I cannot rest." Sarah's heart sank. "Do you know who took them?" Anna shook her head. No. But I can feel them out there, somewhere. Please, Sarah. Find my bones and return them to me. Sarah promised to do everything she could to find Anna's bones and put her spirit to rest. She left the cemetery feeling both determined and scared. She knew that her investigation could lead her into dangerous territory, but she couldn't ignore the ghost's pleas for help. Over the next few days, Sarah scoured the town for any clues that might lead her to Anna's missing bones. She asked around and searched every corner of the town, but to no avail. No one seemed to know where the bones could be, or if they even existed. Sarah was starting to feel discouraged when she remembered something that Mr. Johnson had told her. He had mentioned that Anna's family had left the town in the wake of her tragic death, vowing to never return. Sarah wondered if there might be some connection between Anna's family and the missing bones. She decided to investigate further and started digging through old town records. Eventually, Sarah came across a record of Anna's family's departure from the town. According to the document, the family had left in the middle of the night, without a word to anyone. It also mentioned that they had taken some of their belongings with them, including a trunk that was said to contain some of Anna's personal effects. Sarah realized that the trunk could be the key to finding Anna's bones. She started asking around the town, trying to track down any descendants of Anna's family who might still be living in the area. It took a while, but eventually, Sarah was able to track down a woman named Marie, who claimed to be a distant relative of Anna's. Sarah explained the situation to Marie and asked if she knew anything about the missing bones. Marie seemed hesitant at first, but eventually, she agreed to let Sarah see the trunk. She led Sarah to her attic, where the trunk was stored, covered in dust and cobwebs. Sarah's heart pounded as she opened the trunk. Inside, she found a pile of old clothing and a few personal items that had belonged to Anna. But there were no bones. Sarah was about to give up when she noticed a small, hidden compartment at the bottom of the trunk. She opened it up and gasped when she saw a small, wrapped package inside. Carefully, Sarah unwrapped the package, revealing a small, ancient-looking bone. She knew immediately that it was a piece of Anna's skeleton. Sarah thanked Marie for her help and took the bone back to the cemetery. As she approached Anna's grave, she felt a sense of dread wash over her. She knew that returning the bone could be dangerous, but she also knew that it was the right thing to do. With trembling hands, Sarah placed the bone on top of the grave. "Anna," she whispered, "I have your bone. Please, rest in peace." Suddenly, Sarah felt a cold breeze blow past her. She heard a voice whisper in her ear, "Thank you." The ghostly occurrences in the town stopped that night. Sarah never saw Anna's ghost again, but she knew that the young woman's spirit had finally found peace. In the weeks that followed, Sarah found herself reflecting on her experience. She realized that sometimes, the past can come back to haunt us, and that it's up to us to confront our fears and find a way to put the ghosts of the past to rest. Sarah also realized that her curiosity and love of adventure had led her into dangerous territory, but she didn't regret it. She knew that sometimes, taking risks was necessary to make a difference in the world. Years later, when Sarah was an adult, she returned to the small town in Texas. As she walked through the cemetery, she saw Anna's grave and smiled. She knew that the experience had changed her life forever, and that she would never forget the lessons she had learned. As Sarah looked around the cemetery, she noticed a group of teenagers standing by one of the older graves. She could hear them whispering and giggling, and she realized that they were probably telling ghost stories to scare each other. Sarah smiled to herself and approached the group. "Hey," she said. "Do you guys want to hear a real ghost story?" The teenagers looked at her skeptically, but Sarah could see the curiosity in their eyes. "I once met a ghost right here in this cemetery," she said. Her name was Anna, and she had been haunting this town for over a century. But I was able to help her find peace. Sarah told the teenagers the story of Anna and her missing bones, and how she had helped to put the ghost to rest. She could see the fear and awe in their eyes as they listened. As Sarah finished the story, one of the teenagers spoke up. "That's so cool," he said. "Do you think there are any other ghosts around here?" Sarah laughed. "Who knows? Maybe there are. But just remember, if you ever do come across a ghost, be respectful. They might have a story to tell." The teenagers nodded, looking a little spooked but also excited. Sarah smiled at them and then walked away, feeling a sense of satisfaction. She knew that she had passed on a little bit of the magic and curiosity that had led her to Anna's ghost all those years ago. As Sarah walked back to her car, she realized that the small town in Texas would always hold a special place in her heart. It was the place where she had discovered her love for adventure and her ability to confront her fears. And even though she had put Anna's ghost to rest, she knew that the memories of her experience would stay with her forever. The end.